Welcome back to the deep dive. Every year, right around this time, we all get a little obsessed with speed, velocity. We look at the markets for the fastest growth. We track tech for the next big leap. It's always about what's moving, what's accelerating. But the material you've brought for this session, it completely flips that. It suggests that to really get a handle on this moment around 2026, we shouldn't be looking at what's speeding up. We need to look at what's staying absolutely, stubbornly still.
Okay, let's unpack this. It feels like our mission today is to map these time lags, to really understand what hasn't moved and why that's creating so much friction.
That's the core of it. The entire analysis is built on that structural observation. The sources are basically saying that the most revealing thing to look at right now isn't speed, it's not growth. It's the visible time difference, the gap between the layers of our system that are moving at an incredible pace and the fundamental layers that are just not. We've talked before about that last phase, which was all about movement, where trust was shifting spatially. This mapping, GOA-5, is the sequel. It's the story of stopping, a temporal solidification.
Exactly. It's defining our world not by what we've achieved, but by how these different speeds have hardened into place.
And to really feel that stoppage, I think we have to quickly remember just how fast that initial movement really was. I mean, the sources give a pretty clear recap of that phase where trust was.
Well, it was basically stripped away from its old anchors. Can we just quickly list what it detached from?
Yeah.
Because it felt so abrupt.
Oh, it was. It's described as a fundamental unwiring. So trust moved away from the idea of the nation, as the ultimate container. It moved away from currency as a reliable store of value.
Right.
It moved away from big central institutions, government, media, all of that. And I think this is crucial. It moved away from labor as the main way we get status and reward in society.
And that trust, it didn't just vanish into thin air. It had to go somewhere. It rewired itself almost instantly.
Instantly. It just latched onto the fastest things it could find, to information, to visibility, and really to speed itself. And those channels together are what the analysis calls the OS layer, the operating system. And that's where things like finance, AI, real-time data, that's where all that lives.
Right. And the key thing there is that everything is instantaneous. Investment, evaluation, even our collective attention. It all shifts at the speed of light. That was phase one, this high-speed movement.
Okay, so we all saw that, the rapid detachment, the instant reattachment in the fast lanes. But here's the hook. This is the start of the tension. The sources are very explicit. Even as the OS layer was moving that fast, the base layer of society has not yet moved.
Correct. And that one observation, that one sentence, is what anchors everything we're seeing now in 2026. All that value, all that trust, it got rewired at the very top of the system. But the physical, the material, the social realities of our daily lives, the base layer, it stayed right where it was, tethered to the ground.
So if you have all this energy, all this value moving at lightning speed in the OS layer, but the ground itself is holding still, then you have to talk about that messy middle ground. I mean, what happens when all that high-speed value hits the hard, slow walls of everyday life?
And that's the transition. We go from looking at the fast layers to analyzing the layers that are specifically designed to slow things down.
Yeah.
The sources call this GOA-6, the deceleration layer. These are the parts of the system that are supposed to absorb that velocity, to integrate it so it doesn't just shatter everything.
And this is where that general unease that you feel comes from, isn't it? The sense that the system's broken, even when you're told parts of the economy are booming.
Precisely. You're feeling the heat from the friction, from the sheer force between those two speeds. And this deceleration layer has three main parts: labor, redistribution, and institutions.
Okay, let's take them one by one. Labor. So we're talking about jobs, wages, how skills are valued.
Exactly. Think about it. If trust and value are now based on some instantaneous algorithmic evaluation, how does that speed fit with a slow, calendar-based system, a system of, bi-weekly paychecks or annual reviews?
It doesn't. It doesn't fit. You're creating value in minutes, but the reward mechanism is still chugging along like it's 1995. You get rewarded in months.
And that failure to absorb the speed creates what the sources call unused trust. The value is generated, the system knows it, but the slow labor mechanism can't process it fast enough. So you get this feeling of high effort, but stagnant results.
It just sits there unrecognized. Okay, what about the second one? Redistribution. So taxes, subsidies, Social Security.
Right. If the OS layer is creating and moving wealth instantly, the redistribution layer, let's say the tax system, is still working on quarterly or annual cycles.
It's like trying to catch a fighter jet with a butterfly net.
A perfect analogy. The money moves too fast to be tracked, to be assessed, and then effectively put back into the system. And so the trust we all place in a fair system of taxes, in a social safety net, that also becomes unused. The system is structurally blind to the speed, so it can't do its job, and that just creates more friction, more distrust.
Which leaves the third point of friction: institutions, the laws, the regulations, the whole administrative machine.
The administrative OS, as they call it. And these things, laws, permits, bureaucracy, they are designed fundamentally for stability, for slow, measured change.
They are the definition of slow.
They are. And this is where the analysis introduces the next phase, what it calls membrane hardening.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because the insight here is that this isn't just incompetence. That's the easy assumption, that the government is just slow and broken.
It's not. The argument is that this is a defensive response. The institutions aren't failing because they're lazy. They are actively defensively hardening themselves. They're trying to shield us from the chaotic volatility of that super fast OS layer.
Because if they tried to keep up,
The whole base layer would collapse.
Yeah.
The stability of contracts, of property, of daily life, it would all just fly apart. So the institutions are acting like a shell. They're stiffening, thickening their membranes to protect us from that sheer force.
so the system is choosing stability over fluidity, which leads to the core phrase of this whole map.
Trust hasn't disappeared. It has been enclosed.
It's sealed off. It's inside those slow, hardened membranes, and it can't get out. It can't circulate back into the economy. It can't connect with the base layer.
And that explains so much. It explains why paying taxes can feel useless, or why working hard can feel like it leads nowhere. If the reward system is enclosed, your effort just hits that hard membrane. The feedback loop is cut.
Your effort becomes structurally pointless because the connection between the layers has been severed defensively.
Precisely. The energy is there, but the circulation is locked down.
Okay, so that brings us to right now. If the system has defensively enclosed itself, why 2026? Why is that year singled out in the material? What's so special about it?
It's important to be clear here. The sources don't frame 2026 as a year of collapse. There's no single event.
Yeah.
They call it an exposure point,
An exposure point, meaning?
meaning it's the moment where these accumulated time lags become so huge that you just can't ignore them anymore. They become overtly visible in daily life. And you see this in all these structural contradictions. You see an interest rate change today, but the real impact on your mortgage or on jobs, that lags by a year, maybe more. That lag is now so visible it's affecting confidence in real time.
And you see it with AI, the incredible promise of its speed versus the slow manual process of trying to get a permit for a small business. The gap is just, it's absurd.
It's impossible to reconcile. And this inability to manage the speed difference, it leads to the single most important indicator the analysis points to. It's the constant increase, the normalization of what it calls an unexplained sense of unfairness.
A structural signal.
It's a structural signal, not just a mood. It's not pessimism. It's the low-frequency hum that's generated by the fast OS layer grinding against that hardened deceleration layer. Now, the crisis isn't an event. It's the fact that this dissonance, this unfairness, has become the normal background noise.
Okay, so if we accept this map, this idea of defensive enclosure, then the point of this isn't really to predict anything. It's more about orientation, about knowing where you are.
That's exactly the utility of GOA-5. It's a set of coordinates, not a warning. And understanding where trust is stopping, it clarifies a few things for you. First, it tells you where not to place your expectations. Expecting sudden regulatory reform or rapid wage growth, it's structurally unsound. Those layers are designed to be slow right now.
You're asking the membrane to be soft when its entire job is to be hard.
Precisely. Second, it shows you where the reconnections need to happen eventually. If the problem is enclosure, then the long-term work is all about creating safe permeability. How do you reconnect the fast and slow layers without causing a collapse?
And third, it helps you pick the right time frame for what you're doing.
Yes. If you're operating in that OS layer finance, your timeline is minutes, maybe months. But if you're working within the institutional layer, your timeline for meaningful change has to be years, maybe decades. And getting that alignment wrong is the definition of frustration right now.
So this is all about improving the, what did you call it, the resolution of action.
Right. When you see an event, political, technological, whatever, you have to ask, which layer is this actually happening in? The fast OS, the hardening deceleration layer, or the static base layer.
Hmm.
If you misread the layer, you misread the entire event.
So we've mapped this tension, the enclosure of trust, the normalization of friction. The system is stable, yes, but it's stagnant. But the sources don't just leave it there. They leave us with a question, a challenge that points to whatever comes next.
Hmm.
If this membrane has hardened to protect us from volatility, under what conditions can it become permeable again, safely? Is the answer a new technology that can somehow bridge that speed gap? Is it building entirely new institutions outside of the old administrative system?
Mhm.
Or does it require us to fundamentally redefine our values around speed itself?
And that is the open question. Because this current setup,
Mm,
stable for now, but the normalization of that dissonance, that unfairness, that's not sustainable in the long run. The resolution has to lie somewhere outside the current map of enclosure.
a very structural and I think deeply thoughtful way to look at the friction we all feel. Thank you for helping us walk through these coordinates. And thank you, as always, for providing source material for this deep dive.